Welcome back, Splunk enthusiasts. This video is brought to you by Lame Creations, log analysis made easy, where we help you master the tools and techniques to become a Splunk pro. Welcome to another video by Lame Creations, log analysis made easy, and we're going to simplify and talk about the main meta fields and how your data gets from your source to the index. This will be a two-part video. The first part is going to be the conceptual idea of how it gets from the source, labels all the data and gets it sent out, and how those fields, the metadata fields, are created. And the second video will be about how it gets to the index. So what I basically set up here is this conceptual idea. We have a machine A. In this case, it's probably some Windows box, since I'm getting Windows event logs. It could be a Windows server, a Windows application server. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And everything in here, this machine, it's creating Windows host logs. It's got some scripted input, which of those of you are not familiar, you can have scripts run from the universal forwarder or whatever, and the output of those scripts can then be collected. And so that's what it's called, scripted input. And so that's a data source that we could be using. Application X logs, that might be your SQL server, your Outlook, your whatever application, and it's creating logs. And the concept is you're going to go in there, you're going to set up a universal forwarder on this box, and it's going to be monitoring these logs. Technically, it can monitor anything that it can read, any text and stuff like that. And you might be sending that stuff out by heck, another manner, the normal method. One of the most common is TCP out is what they'll call it, but we're not going to go really into all the different methods, but the concept is you'll set your universal forwarder will be set up to output the files, and it will have a format that it's going in, and you're going to say which files you want to monitor. You know, I could have chosen, hindsight's 2020, maybe I wanted to put a fourth log source here, and we're not monitoring it. To be fair, there's probably logs on any Windows box that you're not logging. You got to specifically say, I want you to monitor this location. I want to monitor this location. By installing a universal forwarder on a machine, it does not just naturally say, oh, well, that means any form of log that could possibly be generated, I'm going to forward. No, you've got to say, I want to monitor the host logs. I want to monitor the scripted input. I want to monitor application X, application Y, etc. I've covered many times in these videos. This is all about getting ready if you're going to be taking exams or to just be proficient in understanding your Splunk environment. Understand that Splunk has meta fields. Every log will come with an index field, a host field, a source field, a source type, a timestamp, and those logs will come on every one of them. And so where does that data get derived? The host field is the name of the machine sending the logs. So we have machine A here. So by default, the host field for your logs will represent that machine. So you can actually look at your logs, do a Splunk query, and the host field that comes back will give you an indication of where the logs came from. Windows host logs and scripted input, application logs, each one of those is unique type of log, and it's going to create a source field. Like the Windows host logs are going to be called XML win event log security. That's a really large mouthful. We're going to explain how all of those pieces get put together, but it's basically saying that this source is where I'm getting these logs. It's identifying where and specifically am I monitoring. So I'm monitoring the Windows host logs, the security host logs in this case. You're actually going to have security logs, you're going to have application logs, you're going to have system logs. And so it's just going to say which of these logs am I monitoring, and that's going to be the source. In the scripted input, it's going to be the name of the script. So this would be a PowerShell script, get process. And that's going to be what's going to be in there. Application X logs, it might be writing its logs to a JSON file, a text file, a CSV file, whatever, and that would then be the file path, c:/logs mylogs.json. and you might see my logs 1, my logs date. And so this can also be useful when you're doing searches. Knowing the source, it'll tell you exactly if I need to go back to the source truth, where were these logs? I want to look at them. I now know where I'm getting them. I look at, okay, it's on machine A because I saw it in the host field, and I know where to go look for it because I look at the source. We didn't discuss source type, but source type is just basically the way it's going to parse these logs. In this situation, it's XML, so the source type would be explaining how those XML nodes are broken apart. Get process, the source type that would read it, would be something that parses apart the fields. However, the get process sends the data in, your get process source type would be the tool that would be used to parse those fields out so it doesn't come across as just one big giant lump of raw text. Application X logs, it's again, how are these JSON logs? If this is true JSON, well, the source type might be nothing more than read it as JSON. If it's a CSV, it might be, the source type might be saying CSV and then telling you what the headers are. But basically, remember, source type is just, it just follows along, but it's the key to reading these logs, how to get them out. They're all going to come across as one giant text blob, and the source type will tell you how to parse them out. We didn't discuss anything about index. We'll go into showing those when we look at the file, the config files that send these things out. You'll set the index in there, and that's just basically saying when you arrive over here to the indexer, please make sure to stick these logs in this index, stick these logs in that index, and these logs in this index. And I've simplified it. We're going to cover in the second video, the sequel to this video, in indexer 9997. That's basically where are we sending it. This would be the name of your indexer, the IP address, and you send it by default to port 9997. That's the Splunk listening port for any logs. Now I said an indexer. We'll discuss it. It can go many different locations. It can go to other Splunk systems. It can go to another universal forwarder, a heavy forwarder. It could go to a indexer. It could go to Cribble. It can go to a lot of different things. That's why we've decided to set this up as a second video. But just know that you're going to forward it out there, and we'll discuss really briefly where that's set over here in the universal forwarder to know where to send your logs. I've jumped into my universal forwarder. I'm in the Etsy system local, and I'm looking at the outputs.conf. Typically, when you set up your universal forwarder, it will say, where do you want to send the logs? And you do it with a nice little GUI, or you've got a script that tells it. But this is the log. When I look inside, if you didn't set this up and you want to know where it's going, you just want to come in, find the outputs.conf file. It's usually in your system local. And you can look here and you can say, all right, by default, this is TCP out. This is just going to be the TCP. This is the normal universal forwarding. This is the most common way logs are sent. But if you were doing HEC, it would show up here as a HEC. And anyway, it's going to say that it's going to give it some name, and this is going to point to where the server is. So this is going to point to 192.168.1.117, and notice it's going to port 9997. There can be other settings down here, but by default, this is the most basic setup, and you can see that that's how it's going. That's where it knows its destination. It's all controlled here in the outputs.conf. Let's go jump over to the inputs.conf. That is what Splunk will be monitoring. I said it will monitor the logs, you tell it. This Splunk TA Windows is monitoring regmon win event log. Here's a good example. We talked about the Windows event log security. This is the stanza that monitors it. It's enabled. It's going to grab the oldest. We're going to look. It's going to eliminate certain logs, and we can add others in there. And then here, this render XML equals true. That's going to take these logs and turn them into XML. And then it's got the win event log. And ultimately, because no one defined a source here, it's going to try to parse it together. It's going to take this XML, because it's XML render, and it throws it on top of that. So it becomes XML win event log colon, and then security. If you remember right, I said that's the name of the source. It took that win event log colon, and it went / security. The slashes are removed, and it added the XML onto it. That's where that source name came from. Over here, we're going to do the same thing. If I were to look at my applications, it would be XML win event log colon application. That's how it's getting its source. I'm going to come down here and we're going to actually see, here's a monitoring stanza. This is exactly that concept I said of looking for a file. This is going to go to the win directory / Windows update.log, and it's going to grab those. Here, they defined the source type. Here, no source type was found, so it's going to default. So anyway, we can see that we're defining indexes in here. They're saying where it wants to go. You could put up here a default stanza and everything would have an index. But anyway, so the point is, here's a PowerShell command. It's going to be PowerShell this. The source is going to have this in its name because that's how it's getting the script. Anyway, so that's where source comes from. And so it's all here in that inputs.conf. By default, I don't think there's anything here that calls out the host. And so they're just going to use the default name for this host. But you could change it. I can actually come in here and I could write in a host and it would change the name of the host. Now that's going to make, you got to be careful. It's a double-edged sword. Change it. Then if someone's reading the logs and they don't understand, they're going to try to go back and find these logs on machine X and you changed it. So it's not saying machine X anyway. So be careful, but all of these fields, those meta fields are controlled. They're controlled by the inputs.conf. We got the host, it's grabbing the name of the machine. The source, it's coming out of this little stanza. Source type, if you choose to declare it, you put it in here. And the time is going to be coming from your actual raw events. But the host, source, and source type and index are all derived from your underlying comp files. So quick review, the machine, you install the universal forwarder on it, you supply whether you're going to do hex, TCP out, whatever, that's in your outputs.conf file. It will then, you'll choose to monitor specific files, that's in your inputs.conf file, and you'll monitor these logs, and coming out of there, any logs that are monitored, they'll be tagged with the metafields host, which comes from the name of the machine. It will tag the source, which is that stanza in the inputs.conf. And then the source type is just how to read those logs. And that can be tagged in there as well in the inputs.conf. Thanks for tuning in to Lame Creations, log analysis made easy. If you found today's video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on the latest tips, tools, and tutorials to boost your log analysis skills. Want to take it a step further? Become a member to support the channel and gain exclusive early access to videos and exclusive focused training. Join us on Discord where we dive even deeper, share insights, and tackle questions together. Until next time, from Lame Creations, where we help you go from being a lame analyst to a Splunk ninja.